Hey Edge and Breakaway small groups. Today we are continuing our Vibe series talking about anger. And now, anger can pop up anywhere in our lives. Just a couple weeks ago, right before Christmas, I got angry with my wife about how she wrapped something that was a present for her siblings sooner than I wanted her to. Because I thought I couldn't get it in the car while it was wrapped. So I took all the wrapping paper just off the present because I was mad at her. Now, this wasn't just a small present, it was an entire ping pong table. And so you can imagine that then she was mad at me and we had a fight, an argument, and it can pop up anywhere. Now, by the way, she was right. We rewrapped it and I was able to get it in the car without the wrapping paper breaking. So I'm sorry, Holly. But anger can pop up anywhere in our lives. For example, if you are a driver, you might know something called road rage. You're just driving down the road, someone does something dumb, and all of a sudden you get so mad at that person. Now, maybe you don't experience that, or maybe you can't drive yet, but maybe you've experienced hallway rage. Now, this is when someone comes up to you, says something to you, does something to you, gives you that look, bumps you a little too hard, you've got a little bit of past history, and all of a sudden you're so angry at that person. Hallway rage. It's a thing. Now, the thing about anger is it's not always a bad thing. In this whole series, we're talking about emotions. Emotions aren't bad things. A mentor of mine once said to me that emotions are great tools, but terrible masters. So emotions can be great, and we should get angry when we see things in the world that aren't right. When there's injustice in the world, that should make us upset. There's a couple stories about Jesus where he's angry at their disbelief, so he heals someone, or he's angry at how they're mistreating the temple, God's place of worship, and people are taking advantage of the poor, and so he starts flipping tables. He's the original table flipper. He's the starter of the meme. And so he starts flipping tables and clearing out the sin and the injustice that was in the table or in the temple. Anger can actually be something that is good and right when it's about something that is unright, injustice. Now, what we do with that anger can be really important. Now, anger shows up in each of us differently. Maybe for some of you, you're yellers, you'll yell. Maybe some of you, you're fighters, you'll start lashing out physically. Maybe some of you, it's a silent treatment, or you'll have bitterness or sarcasm. Or maybe you just get revenge. You don't even say anything to the other person, you just get back at them. Anger can pop up in different ways according to our different personalities and circumstances, and it can affect all of us because most of the time how we act out in anger is very destructive to those around us and to ourselves, our relationships, everything in our life. So what does the Bible have to say about this? In the book of James, James was the brother of Jesus who didn't believe Jesus was God until he saw Jesus rise from the dead. I mean, that would definitely convince someone. And so he wrote this letter to these churches, encouraging them, showing them how to act in light of Jesus' resurrection. So he's writing this, and this is what it says in James 4, verse 1. He says, "What causes fights and quarrels among you?" Now, if I were to ask you that question, what causes fights and quarrels among you? You might give me a lot of other answers. You might say, my parents, and they've got dumb rules, unrealistic expectations. Or maybe you'll say, siblings that won't stop being annoying. Or maybe friends that don't text back. Or a stepdad who acts like he's always right. Or people with obnoxious TikTok accounts. I mean, all these things cause anger, quarrels, and fights. You might give me all these different reasons, point to all these things, but this is what James says. He answers his own question. He says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from the desires that battle within you? Now here's the truth. As long as we think the problem is outside of us, we'll never take care of the problem inside of us. He says, don't they come from the desires that battle within you? That's what causes fights. As long as you're pointing the finger, pointing the blame, You're always going to say, oh, I'm not getting playing time because my coach is dumb, instead of being like, oh, maybe it's because I talk back to him, or maybe it's because I don't respect him, or maybe because I don't show up on time to practice, or I don't try as hard during sprints, or oh, I've got a bad grade, but it's because my teacher is stupid. They are so dumb. Instead of taking responsibility and saying, oh, maybe it's because I didn't do my homework, or I was disrespectful when I asked that question, or I wasn't listening. Or, oh yeah, I've got a bad relationship with my parents, but because their rules are so dumb, instead of saying, it's because I'm disrespectful, I don't obey their rules. Or, oh yeah, that friendship is ruined because they did this or they did that, instead of I contributed to it too. Anger can stem often from not getting our way. And as long as we blame everything outside of us, we'll never take care of the problems inside of us. So, one step in this problem can be found in the book of Ephesians. Here's what it says in Ephesians. He says, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, here's the key, as God in Christ forgave you. One of the main keys of fighting against anger is recognizing that God, in his righteousness, had a right to be angry towards us for our sin. And yet, in Christ, he chose to forgive those who put their trust in Jesus. And so, as people who were once objects of God's wrath, who have been set free into a right relationship with God, who are we to hold something against other people? And so I think there's two things that can help out with anger. One is humility. Humility means we recognize that we are a part of the problem. We might not be the whole problem, but we have contributed to the problem. And the second thing is forgiveness. Forgiving as God and Christ forgave us. So humility helps us deal with our part, and forgiveness helps us deal with the other person's part. Because of Jesus, anger does not have to be the boss of you.